Everyone to my JupyterCon 2020 talk about how to avoid death by Jupyter Notebooks towards more educational and effective notebooks. My name is Julia Wagemann and I'm an independent consultant for geospatial data and a PhD candidate at Philipps University of Marburg. For the past 5 years, I've been working in the intersection between data providers of large volumes of environmental data on one side and data users of specifically climate, meteorological and atmospheric data on the other side. I've been using Jupyter Notebooks since 2014 and specifically since last year, since 2019, I'm developing a Jupyter-based training on atmospheric composition data for EUMETSAT, the European Organization for the Exploitation of Meteorological Satellites. And the idea for this presentation and talk for JupyterCon 2020 came specifically while I'm developing this Jupyter-based training, because I saw different types of notebooks, but I also saw like a large volume of notebooks available. But often I have the feeling that it doesn't actually reach the audience, and also the aim the Jupyter Notebooks actually have is not fully fulfilled, because often the creator of Jupyter Notebooks don't also think enough about what the audience is interested in, and also how the audience could actually learn the content in the best way possible. And so this talk shares specifically some key concept and principle I'm applying when I develop Jupyter-based training material for the processing and analysis of large volumes of geospatial data. But I also think that these concepts and principles are also easily applicable for other Jupyter-based training environments. So yeah, you can also find me on Github. There on Github, I share also quite a few tutorials I've been developing with Jupyter Notebooks, and you can also find me on Twitter. So the motivation for this talk, I already started a bit, is that on Github there is a large volume of Jupyter Notebooks available. If you just look for Jupyter Notebooks, then you find over 25,000 repositories on GitHub, and also over 700,000 code contributions which are related to Jupyter Notebooks. So at the moment, which is a good sign, it is trendy to share code examples, Jupyter Notebooks, and it has never been easier to actually collaborate with code, and also to share your code and also show your work, which is good. But on the other hand, the reality at the moment is we are on the verge of death by Jupyter Notebooks, because everyone is just bringing and dumping their code into a Jupyter Notebook, thinking that by sharing a Jupyter Notebook without actually thinking about how to structure the new Jupyter Notebook and also what audience this Jupyter Notebook is about, everyone is just dumping the code there, and then it's actually not very effective, because people don't understand code, people don't understand what this notebook is about. And at the moment we have many Jupyter Notebooks, but probably not so many Jupyter Notebooks that are educational and effective. So, and how notebooks look like at the moment, I just brought in some examples here, but this is from examples from my code. I just tried to make some examples how one maybe should not create and do some notebooks. For example, often you see very unorganized notebooks that, for example, libraries are loaded in the middle of a workflow, or sometimes you see that there are empty cells in between because they haven't been cut out. When someone shares notebooks, it's also messy because no specific naming convention is followed. So often people just call it untitled, and then it's going up to untitled 1, untitled 2, etc. So there you can already bring in a structure and organization. And then also often you see that simply code is just dumped without explanations or code documentation or explanations. They still left, but the related code has been deleted. So long code blocks without explanation, and users actually don't understand what's happening in this code. So the reality is actually, even though people use Jupyter Notebooks and share their work with Jupyter Notebooks, at the same time, it's not reproducible. So people who actually open the notebook, it's really hard to understand the structure and also what this Jupyter Notebook aims to do, and also to learn what the author did. So I would like to share today some of my key concepts I apply when I develop Jupyter Notebooks. They are in 3 different categories. So the first category is get organized. So it gives you an overview how you can actually structure your notebooks and also your notebooks in general. Then how you can work with some HTML and Markdown gimmicks to actually bring in layout and outline in your notebooks, because layout and outline and structure is key when you want to showcase a workflow and also the different steps how to actually come or get to your results. And then, which eventually comes with any coding project, outsourcing and modularizing, and this is also possible with Jupyter Notebooks. So the first, I also want to say that as part of this talk, I developed a series of Jupyter Notebooks, so you can follow along the examples in the Jupyter Notebooks, which I made available for this talk. And there's also an overview of the notebooks, how you can actually follow these notebooks. And there's one notebook which actually summarizes and captures all the key concepts I'm presenting here now. So the first concept is I apply and I'm a big fan of is to actually also share your notebooks together with an index notebook. And so index notebook is the idea that different notebooks have usually a structure and an idea how they belong together. And so with this index notebook, you just give an overview of what these notebooks are about, who the author is, and also an outline what notebooks are part of this tutorial or this educational repository, for example. So it gives an overview of what notebooks are about. It provides an outline and links to other notebooks with Markdown, and you can also link to it additional external content. The example in the notebooks I provided, it's just the 00_index notebook, and a screenshot you see here. So basically, it introduces your audience to your notebooks and your training. And key is also that your audience sees here an overview of the notebooks that are available as part of this training. The second concept under getting organized which is very important as well, to follow a naming convention. Because if you, for example, if you develop some notebooks with certain case studies on data analysis and you just call them what the case study is doing, then I personally, and I think also many others, they always a bit confused what logic and sequence is to follow. And if you actually help your audience by following a naming convention, that you also help your audience to actually easily go through your content. And so I usually do it with using numbers and then underscore and then what this notebook is about. And so my training always starts with 00, which is the index notebook, and then the subsequent notebooks, they are numbered with 01, 02, etc. And this helps others when they, for example, also access a Jupyter Hub. They already see this sequence, and so this is logical that also people just start following the sequence. And at the same time, I will come to this in the next point. You can also link the different notebooks in this sequence you would like your audience to follow these notebooks. And so here the example is what I prepared. Basically, the index notebook. Then the first notebook is an example notebook on examples. What I presented at the beginning. The motivation of this talk is how to not do Jupyter Notebooks. And so a notebook that is a bit messy, that is not very cleaned up, it doesn't have a proper workflow and structure, etc. The second notebook is then some key concepts. So all the concepts I present here, they're also part of this notebook. And then the third notebook is an example of a concept, how to actually outsource functions and code, and how you can load code from other notebooks in a notebook. And so this is the next step, why also a logical naming convention is very important, because I always find it very important in your notebook also to offer this sequence of notebooks that basically when someone is in your notebook, instead of going back to your home folder and then you have to open the other notebook, they can actually scroll through the notebooks while being in the notebook. So this is an example of a navigation pane. So after the header, so after a logo, you just offer a navigation pane, so where people can go back to the notebook that has been visited, and then it also showcases and links to the next notebook of the series. And you can easily do this with HTML. So you just set a href indicator or href tag to the notebook you would like to link. So here the example on the left is a simple href link. And then because here I wanted to have it floating on the right side, I used the span tag for that it's floating on the right. And then I also referenced the next Jupyter Notebook link, or the next notebook I would like to link to. So yeah, you can use simply HTML for linking to different notebooks, and you can create and set up a navigation pane. And then often also just something about the look and feel, but it's similar to also any other things you do, for example, presentations. It's about setting up a identity, a look and feel that people also feel comfortable and enjoy the content you prepared, because in the end you invest a lot of time preparing this content, so you also would like your audience enjoying this and also appreciating the time you actually develop the content in the notebook. And I think always footer and header of your notebook is some key concepts, because in the header you can, for example, add a logo, you can add an image. So here the example shows for JupyterCon, the notebooks I developed because they related to the JupyterCon 2020. And then the footer, you can add license information, you can add external links, you can add a link to GitHub where you host the notebooks, etc. But this like always a nice start and closure of the notebook, and at the same time it gives a nice framework of the course and the content you develop. So images you can also add with an HTML code, so you just add an image, a link to the file, and then you can also specify if you want to align it in the center, on the right and the left, and also the size of the image. I always recommend also organizing images in a specific image folder. So here the example, all the images I use for the course are stored and saved in under a IMG folder. And here in the footer, I just provide some license information, but as I already said, you can also provide some external links or some additional notes, etc. Or also another logo or another image. It's really up to you, but it's a nice framework you provide for your training. The second category I would like to start is layouting and outline of your notebooks, because yes, providing a nice structured layout helps your audience also to go through the content and to understand also your logic, why you developed your notebook in a specific way. And so one key concept I always apply in my notebooks is a table of contents, because I think when people open the notebook and they see then already an overview of the main headings of the notebook, they also see basically the content of like what content this notebook has. And for example, sometimes it could be that the audience is just interested in the last section, but not in the other one, rather than then scrolling down and not knowing where exactly the content is where I'm interested in. With this table of contents, I help my audience also to better navigate through content they're really interested in. And so it provides an overview of the notebook itself, so the main headings, and it also, as I already said, it helps your audience to navigate directly to content they're interested in. How do you set up a table of contents? It's basically two parts. So you have on top, where you want to create your table of contents, you do this with markdown links. So with a square bracket, you add the name of your notebook section. So in this example, the notebook section is Get Organized. And then in the link section, in the brackets, you define a hashtag. And in this example, I define the hashtag #get_organized. And this I do with all the items of the table of contents I would like to index and I would like to link to. And the second part is then, if I'm in the section in the notebook, I define the heading. So with two hash keys for hashtags or hash keys. But before I basically type in the name of the heading, I also add a HTML a statement, and here I take up again the hashtag I defined above. So basically here, so I would like to link this Get Organized item of my table of contents to the Get Organized heading, and it understands basically the hash code or the anchor link by defining hash keys or hashtags here. And so I set the anchor link with AID equals and then the hashtag I defined. So in this example, it's Get Organized, and basically, this allows now the audience to directly go to the Get Organized section rather than scrolling to the specific section. Excuse me. Okay. Then another concept I always find quite handy and could be of use. Depends for some content, for some not, but sometimes for some content it could be of use. Are alert boxes. And they are concepts that it colorizes cells based on different alert levels. And there are 4 different alert levels. So there's alert warning, which colors the box yellow. Then there's alert success, which colors the box green. There's alert danger, which colors the box red, and alert info, which colors the box blue. And so basically this is, you can use these notebooks to provide additional hints or notebooks, or if you develop some exercises, you can also develop a structure that the exercises are in a specific color, for example. This also helps your audience again, because playing with colors, it helps your audience to recognize specific features again. And these alert boxes, they're also very easy. So it's HTML again. So you define a div class, alert minus block, and then the alert warning or alert level. So in this example, it's alert warning, which has a yellow color. And then you add the text or content you would like to have in this box. So here I just added the text alert level warning colorizes a cell in yellow, and then I close the div tag. And then the result are these alert boxes, which can be quite handy. Then there are also some other styling options, which I think many of you already know, but I just wanted to, in order to be complete, I wanted to bring them in. So because they're really nice features, and they help you also to structure your notebook. And it's not a lot of work in order to actually integrate them into your notebook, but your audience will really benefit of it, because it just helps your audience better sometimes it also helps you to basically to introduce some spaces or horizontal rules, because then your audience understands also a new section started, for example. So additional styling options I often use is horizontal rule, just to introduce a space. So I just define a cell as an empty space. And I also use the code formatter quite often to highlight specific contents, or also if I want to highlight specific code, then I also use the code formatter. So horizontal rule is just HR, and then you introduce a horizontal rule. Space cell is the same setup, just with BR, so for break. And the code formatter is you introduce you introduce these two on the left side, highlighting for highlighting text, and then this formats your text in code, and also underlines the background, or puts a light gray color on the back of your text. So this really helps you also to highlight specific key features, or if you would like to, instead of making some text items bold, you can also use this styling option. And then the third category is to outsource and modularize. And the example I provide here is to outsource functions and redundant code. Because, for example, specifically in my area, when I develop workflows for data analysis and data processing, it's basically we often develop redundant code because, for example, visualizing data, it's often the same, or we have also some functions, for example, to geographically subset some geographical data. And this type of code, instead of just copy pasting the same lines of code, after introducing the code in one notebook, we can actually then source it out into a different functions notebook, and then we can reload this function in other notebooks. And this helps also on one time to clean up some notebooks, and also to get rid of many redundant code lines. But on the other side, it also helps to teach your audience how to modularize and how to bring different or to define code blocks, which you can then outsource and reload again. So I think it benefits on many ways. And so basically the idea is here to have two notebooks. So in the example I provided in the functions notebook, you see here an example of a function. So we see here the function is generate geographical subset, and it takes an X array, and then I can specify 4 numbers which represent the geographical bounding box. Then I added also a docstring to my function, which explains the function, what it's doing, and also what it returns, and then the function, the code of the function. And so this is in the functions notebook. And so let's say in our notebook, we would like to make use of this function. And so on your other notebook, so in our example, in the examples I developed for this talk is, and in the second notebook, Jupyter Notebooks Key Concepts, we basically, with the IPyNB library, we can load specific functions and content from the functions notebook. So here we say from the functions notebook, which is also in the same directory of our notebook, then the function can find the notebook. Please import generate geographical subset. And so with this line, we basically load the function without a need to copy paste this entire code. And then we can also apply the function in this notebook. A good or a nice gimmick I always find quite useful is if you load a function, but instead of going back to the functions notebook and seeing what this function is actually is doing, with a question mark and then the function name, you can actually open up the docstring and you can, so when you define the docstring, you can then see what this function is actually doing. So this is why it's always also key to define the docstring of your function, because then you can easily, with question mark and the function name, you can open up the or a window opens up and a docstring explains you what this function is about. So this is quite useful, and I've been applying it a lot when I'm developing currently this training on atmospheric composition data. And so these are the key concepts I apply for most of my notebooks. And before I stop, I would like also to just share with you some key principles which I think will help to make notebooks more educational and effective. And the first is, instead of just dumping your code there and then expecting others trying to understand your code, put an effort in and first of all, try to understand your audience. So for who do you make this notebook? So what is also probably their level of expertise? If you're in doubt, then always go to the lower level of expertise. Always expect that users and your audience knows less than you actually expect, because then the people who are more experienced and who are more experts, they will find what they're interested in. But at the same time, you will help more beginners also to understand your work and navigate through your content. Always also notebooks, I always find simplifying your code is also key, because in the end, you're sharing your notebook because your work should be reproducible. You want to collaborate, others should understand. So it's not about developing the most efficient and most effective code. It's also really having the code that others also understand and can read. And so it's strongly linked with your audience. Of course, if your audience are also experts on the same level as you, then you don't have to simplify. But if you're in doubt, then always simplify your code. One key message I would like you to take home is, just by sharing and creating Jupyter Notebooks, your work or your code is not reproducible. I have the impression that, yes, because it's so easy to develop or to start and sharing Jupyter Notebooks, that people think, oh yes, here I dumped my code into this Jupyter Notebook, and now with this Jupyter Notebook, my work is reproducible. It's not the case, because I already tried to introduce you to some principles that in order to be reproducible, others also have to understand. And it's just by dumping your code and without documentation, etc., it's really hard and also messy for others to understand what you actually want to, what message you would like to convey. And then in many notebooks, my last key principle is, in many notebooks you see a lot of spelling mistakes. And I think it's the same as for other documents or presentations. It's just, it's not a good reflection on you as an author, right? So if you develop notebooks, it's always good to set up a specific work pattern and habit that you just get it checked from one other person or from someone who might be part of the audience. Just ask, hey, how do you like it? Do you understand the structure? Do you understand what this notebook is about? Is this code understandable? Did you find spelling mistakes? So it's also really about quality assurance, and there, more eyes see always better than just your pair of eyes. So just a pattern of habit that, you get double-checked your work and your notebook, specifically if you share it with a larger audience and you use it as training, then good to having and also brought out some spelling mistakes, because in the end the training material you would like to have for longer, you would like to share with others, and so it's just better if the quality is as highest as possible. So as I think tried to indicate, I would like to conclude this talk with a take-home message for everyone, and also a message I would like to motivate everyone to apply these key principles. I just would like to remind you that reproducibility of any type, so reproducible code, reproducible workflow, etc., it does not happen by chance. It does not just happen by creating Jupyter Notebooks. It's really going the extra mile. And I understand applying some of these key concepts is going the extra mile, because it needs an additional effort to structure your notebooks, to think about the best structure, the best workflow, also introducing these nice layout options. But I promise you, your audience and also the entire Jupyter community will really benefit from it, and they will also really appreciate it. And in this light and in this spirit, I would like to inspire and motivate everyone. So please start applying these key concepts, and I would like to thank you for your attention. And yes, please get in touch with me if you have any other questions. Thank you.